Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming to this panel. My name is Boak, and I'm the Assistant Dean for Clinical and Pro Bono Programs at the Law School. I'll have our panelists introduce themselves in a moment, but this is a panel on holistic and collaborative lawyering. So our panelists are going to be sharing a little bit about the Legal Services Center in Jamaica Plain and how they think about lawyering, both from their individual clinic perspective, but more importantly, how they think of it more holistically as a multidisciplinary law firm practice. A note, especially to this audience, but actually is also to the Zoom audience, we do have a bit of a hybrid panel going on. So in the room, we have current students who are registering for clinics, hopefully next week, but then we've also invited admitted students to the panel who are not able to join us on campus, and a special welcome to our admitted students. We are eager to welcome you on campus, hopefully next fall, but are glad you're here with us virtually during this panel. So then just a couple of other logistical notes. So we obviously do have the Zoom that's running, but those of you who are in the audience, when we get to the Q&A, you can ask questions the old-fashioned way just by raising your hand. We do also have a poll everywhere feature. Folks in the in-person audience are welcome to use that. You can ask a question, and then if you're in the audience and someone had a question similar to you, you can upvote that. Those of you who are joining us virtually, that's the primary way you'll be able to ask your questions. So if I'm checking my phone ever, we're going to turn off the side screens while the panelists are presenting, but I'll try to weave in questions throughout the panel as they come in, especially if they're relevant to the topics that the panelists are answering. And I think with that, those are all the logistics. We are recording this so that we can use pieces of it for our website later. But otherwise, why don't we get started? And I will ask our panelists to share both their name, a little bit about their own career trajectory, as well as the clinics and matters that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So Audrey, let's start with you.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. So I'm Audrey Patten. I'm a clinical instructor in the tax clinic at LSC. We're a low-income taxpayer clinic designated by the IRS. So we represent people that are generally below a certain factor of the poverty line cutoff. And we represent people in what are called cases and controversies at the IRS. So direct litigation with the agency, or in the US tax court, or in the federal district courts, and sometimes also in the federal circuit courts. So I've worked at LSC for 7 years. I've been in the consumer law clinic before that, before the tax clinic. And earlier I'd worked at a legal aid office in Lowell, Massachusetts. So nice to meet you.
I'm Alexa Rosenbloom. I'm a clinical instructor in the newly renamed Consumer Protection Clinic. Prior to that, we were the Predatory Lending and Consumer Protection Clinic, which was a bit of a mouthful. Now the work is the same, but a slightly shorter, snappier name. I've actually only been at LSC since January. So those of you in the room have been at HLS longer than I have. Prior to that, I worked at Greater Boston Legal Services, which is the main civil legal aid organization in the Boston area for over 9 years, doing a couple of different types of things, but that consumer law at the end, the last 6 years. And I clerked for a federal magistrate judge before that. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Betsy, Gwin, and I'm a clinical instructor in the Veterans Law and Disability Benefits Clinic out at the Legal Services Center. Our clinic represents disabled veterans in a variety of different types of claims in their efforts to seek access to critical safety net benefits, disability benefits, and with a special focus on providing estate planning services to low-income veterans and their family members, as well as restoring dignity to the service of veterans who were kicked out of the military with less than fully honorable discharges due to trauma or mental health conditions. So we serve a broad range of clients. It's a population-based clinic focusing on serving veterans, but we do practice both before administrative agencies here in Massachusetts, as well as federal agencies, Social Security Administration, Department of Veterans Affairs, and also litigate in state and federal court. So there's a lot of litigation opportunities within our clinic. I've been at LSC and at Harvard for about 8 years, but prior to that, I worked in the public defender's office here in Massachusetts, working on civil cases, representing parents and children in child welfare cases. Nice to meet all of you and look forward to your questions.
Hi, I'm Marianna. I am a clinical instructor at the Family DV Law Clinic at the Legal Services Center. We're in litigation practice, as many of the other clinics are as well. And we have two distinct practice areas, one in obtaining restraining orders in the district courts here in Massachusetts, but also mostly family law matters in the family and probate courts. So we do a lot of everything under the litigation umbrella of drafting pleadings, doing discovery and negotiations, settlement negotiations, and also trial if needed and court hearings along the way. And of course, a lot of the client contact in order to successfully go through the litigation process. And with restraining orders, those are full evidentiary hearings. So we engage in that practice as well in the district court. I've been litigating for 20 plus years. I started out in mass torts litigation on the plaintiff side, and also represented Class 1 railroads on the defense side. But I've been doing child welfare litigation, as Betsy said before, with CBCS more recently, and have been here at LSC since 2019.
Great. So the panel is titled Holistic and Collaborative Lawyering, which is not something you usually talk about in 1L classes. Can you describe, each of you, what that term means to you and really how you practice that, both in your individual clinics, but probably evidently also across the different practices? So we'll go backwards now and start with you, Marianna.
To me, this is the best part of practicing at LSC. In this way, we are presenting to the client as like a multidisciplinary large firm would do, in that we have so many different distinct areas of practice. And our clients come into LSC, now it's just one siloed issue, but so many different issues that impact them. And we are able to help them in all those ways, in a way that many other legal aid or other practices, private practices just cannot. For example, with each of these clinics that are represented here, there are family law clients who've been referred to the tax clinic for tax issues, especially when it comes to if we have a domestic violence victim as a client and they have some tax issues in that they have an innocent spouse claim in the tax or with the IRS, then we would refer them to the tax clinic. We've had victims of domestic violence, again, financial actually abuse, where the spouse or partner took advantage of the social security numbers or other financial abuses that our clients have gone through. And we will refer them to the consumer unit so that they can get their credit cleared up and figure out what liabilities there are. We also have a lot of clients who are veterans or who are married to veterans who need a divorce. And the law there is very specific, and it's not necessarily generally how regular your plain divorces go. So we would refer them to the veteran clinic for those kind of issues, but also for safety net issues that's out of the veterans clinic. So there's always so much interaction and engagement, and we're able to help our clients in so many different facets because of that.
So all of the clients that come through my clinic are united by having some connection to the military, being on the lower end of the income scale and dealing with either disability, mental health condition, or medical condition. And the types of services that we provide within our clinic, as I described, range from accessing safety net benefits to accessing healthcare and disability benefits through the VA and Social Security Administration, as well as thinking about estate planning, specifically around healthcare planning and financial planning and end-of-life planning. But as Marianna says, our clients, although they're coming to us based on those uniting characteristics where we have a particular area of focus, those are usually not the only legal issues that they might be facing at a particular time. And so as much as we try within our own clinic to provide advice and referrals on other types of legal issues, we as attorneys are training our students to issue spot and keep an eye out for those other kinds of legal issues that a client may not even identify themselves. Maybe they heard that if you need help accessing VA benefits, you come to my clinic. But they don't know that they can also ask for help with an eviction proceeding that they're going through. One of the clinics that's not represented here is our housing clinic, which is one of the other clinics out at the Legal Services Center. And so by keeping an ear out for that in our intake process and training our students to look for those things, we can make internal referrals within our office to ensure that when our clients come to us, oftentimes in crisis, we can address not only the things that we know how to do well, but also connect them to other existing resources, whether it's within the Legal Services Center, within the broader HLS community, or other organizations in Greater Boston. I'll leave it there.
Sure, I did not do a good job of describing the consumer protection clinic in my opening. In fact, I don't think I described it at all, other than the name change, but we are completely broad in what we do. We represent consumers in various actions. And that is very broad. It can do with debt collection defense, representing people in affirmative cases against companies based on consumer work. So that means that we basically just represent low-income consumers, which is low-income Massachusetts residents. And that means we have a ton of different issues that, you know, affect all these other practice areas. And it, like both Marianna and Betsy said, there's a lot of cross-clinic referrals, and we ask questions all the time, and it's about representing the client with all of their legal needs, regardless of if it's squarely into one of our projects. So, you know, we settle cases sometimes for money for our clients where they have, you know, gone through abusive debt collection or something, and then their potential tax consequences for that, or consequences on somebody's benefits, or on public benefits. So it's a really important part of our advocacy to make sure that we think about the implications of our work on our clients. Even when they're positive, they're getting money, there are, you know, collateral consequences to that. So it's really important in terms of holistic advocacy to think about the other effects of our work and our litigation. So a lot of that is, you know, wish we could say we're all experts in all areas of the law, despite the fact that our friends and neighbors often think we are and ask us questions. We are not. So holistic advocacy within somewhere like LSC is about finding people who know more about issues than you do, and asking them important questions to help your clients, and as well as referring clients who, the fact of the matter is, when you're working with low-income clients, they rarely have one legal issue. There are very, very often more legal issues, and also sometimes some non-legal issues. So it's helping them to address all of the issues that you can.
Did you have anything, Audrey?
Yeah, so of course I reinforce everything that everybody just said about, one, how we can refer people across clinics, two, how we can think about how a client coming to us in the tax clinic will also have other issues simultaneous that we might want to seek technical support on or advice from another clinic. There is a third piece to holistic lawyering, I think, and that's being better at your own practice area if you understand what is happening simultaneously if the client has other matters going on. So for example, in the tax clinic, I do a lot of cases called innocent spouse cases in the US tax court. They often involve domestic violence victims, not always, but those are cases where I'm trying to prove that one spouse should not be held liable for joint income tax returns. If that person also has a family law matter, whether in-house or not, it's good for me to think about, well, what is going on in that case? Because there are things from that case that might be a central part of the tax court case and vice versa. So I think that us working together as 6 clinics also brings that aspect of it, that we're attuned to how other matters may affect our case, how our case will affect other matters, in addition to being able to work together on specific clients and issues.
So you all have spoken really compellingly about the benefits, but what are the drawbacks? Are there drawbacks to this approach? Are there things such as conflicts or practical matters that need to be considered when you're taking, what sometimes operate like separate law firms with all the protections that comes with, and merging them into a more singular entity?
Go back this way.
And then you need not all speak.
Yeah. I would say within the Legal Services Center, we don't have a problem with conflicts of interest because we are set up as one firm. So I can run over to the Veterans Clinic and talk to Betsy by a client by name. She can already see the file in the same database. Of course, it's not true if you're taking in referrals from other partner organizations, but internally, that's not an issue. I think one drawback can be that different clinics do have different requirements for who they can take in terms of things like income guidelines or grant requirements. So we can't always guarantee a person, oh, you also have a family law matter, you can definitely get into the family law clinic, right? But that being said, again, our work around that is to try and get as much technical support as possible while we're representing people.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add is, as legal services attorneys, which we all consider ourselves in addition to clinical instructors, sometimes you become a bit of a social worker, or you end up verging into territory when you're trying to do a holistic advocacy for someone that are problems you can't solve, even with the holistic advocacy model, as much as we try to. So I guess the only point, and this is an unsolvable problem as an attorney in this space, is that you can't always solve every one of your clients' problems, no matter what approach you take. But we do our best to solve as many problems as we can and look to non-legal solutions if those are possible.
I'll just share a case example where I had a veteran come to our clinic who needed help with accessing VA benefits and also seeking an upgrade through the Department of Defense from their less than fully honorable discharge from the military based on a sexual assault that they experienced in service. Initially, their cases fit perfectly well within our clinic's wheelhouse, and we offered to represent them on multiple matters, pursuing a discharge upgrade, pursuing VA benefits, pursuing access to other safety net benefits. But something that we work on as legal services attorneys and also work on with our students is developing, creating, maintaining strong boundaries with your clients. And because of the holistic approach that we take, this isn't unusual, but my client really saw me and the clinic as their attorney for everything. And so anytime an issue came up, whether it was about housing or it was about another benefit program or a tax issue or a mental health issue, they would call me, and we would do our best as a team to refer out and connect them to other resources. But it was a wake-up call for me when I got a call from the client from a jail cell using their one phone call to call me, asking for help when they got arrested. And I said, you don't want me as your criminal attorney. I don't practice criminal law. I am not well suited to provide this kind of assistance. But unfortunately, we do not have a system in the United States where low-income people can have one attorney for everything and be able to have kind of the general counsel approach that might be more accessible for folks at the higher end of the income scale. And it was a tough conversation to have with the client about making sure they were connected to and reaching out to other resources and working as a clinic to draw those boundaries and provide that other kind of support.
So you started diving in. It's very apparent, I think, from the conversations, this is a very client-focused work. This is a lot of client interaction, a lot of client engagement. Can you talk a little bit about whether client engagement is different in a holistic approach versus in a sort of more individual enterprise? And within this, how you think about each entity building relationships as opposed to one primary?
Just one thing that I would highlight is that in our practice, we have a partnership with the medical legal partnership with the Brigham and Women's Hospital. So almost all of the clients that come to us are self-identified as domestic violent survivors. And so in that sense, we do a lot of trauma-informed lawyering. And I think that is one of those things that we do as a center when we think about clients and the clients that come to us. Because we are trauma-informed, we know that our clients' credibility is hugely at issue for themselves and that they need to be believed before anything else. Also, we have clients who don't think in a linear way. Things don't happen in a chronological way for them and the way they recollect things. So the client's involvement is not just a generic, tell me your facts so I can give you my legal advice. And I think that's kind of in line with the holistic approach, is that our approach to client interaction isn't, let me fix your problems, tell me the facts and I'll fix the problems, or we'll do X, Y, Z steps. We'll have to take a much broader look at how they come to us, what we can do, how do we reach the goals that they want, and be okay when they make decisions that we might think is not in line with what their stated goals are. And that there's, value in that. And there's some things that the clients take away, even if it's not exactly the win in court that we were looking for.
Add at the Legal Services Center, we are off campus. We are based in the community of Boston, out in Jamaica Plain, on purpose, so that we are closer to the low-income neighborhoods in Boston where many of our clients reside. And so while this doesn't always work perfectly, we aspire to be more connected to our client communities, not just through the outreach and the advertising that we do, but by physically being out in the community. And I'll share, it's a great experience if you want to get off campus and get out into the city and get to know some new neighborhoods to come out to our office. But part of that means that we have a lot of walk-ins. We have folks who come into our office looking for legal assistance. And so part of being doing holistic lawyering and being in the clinic is sometimes doing intakes with folks who are knocking on our door, coming in seeking legal advice on issues that we may not be able to represent them on or assist them, but we will do an intake and provide information and referrals. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Oh, no, I was gonna say, we also think about working with community partners. Sometimes that involves efforts around community lawyering, right? And thinking about representing organizations or participating as lawyers within community movements that are already ongoing, and thinking about how we can use our skills to support those movements that are being led by others.
I've talked every time, so Audrey, if you.
I would just, again, echo that part about the community lawyering. Part of that is also making sure that we're establishing lots of partnerships around the city with different types of organizations too. So, I can't speak for how other clinics are set up elsewhere, but again, having that holistic approach with the 6 in one place means that we have a lot of collective knowledge about what other service providers in the city do different things. Veterans organizations, domestic violence organizations, homeless advocacy organizations. So that's also something that impacts how we interact with clients, because we do our best to try and hook them up with services when we can.
I just want to add to that community partnership brings with it trust. It's a built-in trust and a bridge, because they come with people or through the community organizations that they trust. So the fact that they were referred to us through those relationships brings clients in a state of not doubting, who are you, what are you doing for me, what can you do for me, but really, I'm here because someone I trust told me to come here. And you're not starting from negative, you're starting from a positive of let's start building more from that, not from just a state of doubt, right?
So I'm sure there will be more questions about the legal strategy from the audience, but just turning now to your clinics. You gave a little bit of an overview of each of your clinics. And so this is the opportunity to do a bit more of a deeper dive. What is your clinic? How is it structured? With a particular emphasis on what would the students actually be doing in all of this work that you've been describing. So whoever wants to start. Betsy. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
go ahead.
Betsy made eye contact.
Okay, so Veterans Law and Disability Benefits Clinic is an umbrella for 3 different projects. I'll talk through them quickly. The first I'll talk about is our estate planning project. This is a place for students who are interested perhaps in doing transactional work, who are interested in estate planning or trusts and estates more generally, who are interested in legal writing, and who are interested in working directly with clients. Our estate planning project drafts estate plans and documents for disabled veterans and their family members, whether they need a complete estate plan with a will and healthcare proxy and power of attorney and all the other documents that go with that, or they just need help figuring out a tricky situation related to a retroactive benefit award that they received, and now they need advice about establishing a trust in order to preserve access to safety net benefits elsewhere. So it's more transactional work, but a lot of client contact with disabled vets and their families. Our safety net project assists veterans and some non-veterans in accessing disability benefits and other safety net benefits, primarily through the Social Security Administration, but also state welfare benefits and SNAP benefits through the Department of Transitional Assistance. That program also provides services around CORI sealing. So more on the litigation side, a lot of administrative advocacy, and again, a lot of direct work with individual clients. And our third project is our Veterans Justice Project, where we assist disabled veterans in accessing healthcare and disability benefits through state programs, as well as federal programs through the Department of Veterans Affairs, as well as appeals related to discharge status through the Department of Defense. A lot of opportunities to get into federal court, to get before state and federal agencies, to get on your feet and advocate on behalf of clients and engage in different forms of litigation. I will just explicitly say, in order to join our clinic, you don't have to have any particular connection to the military or the veterans community. And indeed, most of our students and our instructors do not. I am not a veteran myself, and although I have family members who have served, I come to this work primarily as a legal services attorney, and see myself as doing anti-poverty work for low-income veterans here in Massachusetts. And we also occasionally take on impact litigation with veterans and groups from across the country.
Alexa, you didn't go last.
Okay. So like I was saying, the consumer clinic has a very broad view. It's basically anything that involves a consumer, we can say as a consumer clinic. If Roger or I are interested in the case, or our students are, we are very litigation heavy. I like to collect new courts. So we're in district, state district court, state superior court, federal court, bankruptcy court, you name it. And with virtual, we're in places that we would never expect to be, virtually Western Mass and that sort of thing. So we almost all of our cases either are in litigation or could be in litigation. The first stage of many consumer affirmative cases is sending a demand letter under the Mass Consumer Protection Law. So sometimes cases settle at that stage, but we are very litigation heavy in a lot of different courts, everything from small claims court, where our students do hearings. Very often we have had 3 students do small claims hearings, I think in the last couple of weeks, where they argue a case, the merits of a case before a clerk magistrate. And that's really common, and any students we have that want to do that, we find cases for them to do that. And that's usually a credit card debt collection case where the arguments are that the debt buyer hasn't proven that they own the debt. We do a lot of not only debt collection defense, but affirmative cases around unfair debt collection. And our students basically are the attorney on the case. They're the primary case handler under our supervision for all of the work. So it's not like we're, giving them annoying work or writing a section of a brief or, doing a small part of some project. The attorneys are in our clinic are the primary case handlers, the ones that talk to our clients, do fact investigation, write demand letters, write pleadings, and argue in court where things are scheduled in a way that their schedules allow for it. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't have a lot of say on when things are scheduled, and I have to cover for my students, but I still consider them my students' cases and talk about covering their hearings. But I have a student next week who's arguing a motion to remove an old default judgment in a case where he was served, the client was served in the wrong place. We fight a lot of post-judgment rent. So outside of court is where a lot of debt collection happens, and fighting and filing lawsuits over whether that was done wrong. We do have a big eye for impact litigation right now. Actually, our clinic is teaming up with the housing clinic around potential impact litigation of what a landlord and their attorney did during COVID, filing mass evictions when they did not actually intend to evict anyone, which is a big no-no. So we do, Roger, the clinic director, has a deed theft case where somebody stole somebody's house right out from under them. But again, students are the, they each have a few cases that are theirs, and there's a ton of supervision and back and forth, but the students are the student attorneys for the cases assigned.
So when I introduce the tax clinic, I like to tell you guys what we don't do first, and what we don't do is a lot of math or accounting or anything like that. We are a case and controversy clinic, so litigation focused. We do not require, expect, or prefer a background specifically in tax. And nor do we expect or prefer that you're going to go into tax after. So a lot of people view tax laws as very specialty niche, but in our clinic, we really want to train students to do two things well. One is learn to work and interface directly with a client. So you become the ones that develop the fact pattern for that client's case, the issue spotting, and figuring out what things about this person's life, their situation, their financial picture fit into the law. The other thing that we want everyone to leave the clinic feeling they have some expertise in is how to wrestle a government agency. You become the representative dealing directly with one of the world's most famous bureaucracies, and that's the IRS. And so we put you in charge of that too. So every student that comes in the clinic, they're dealing with two broad categories of cases. You either have the people coming in and it's a liability issue. They've been assessed a certain amount of tax and it's a wrong assessment. And I mean, we can go on and on about all the different ways that happens, but they're looking for a tool to fight that assessment. And it may be dealing directly with the agency through a number of processes that are founded in agency law, dealing with the executive agency. It may be actually going to a neutral third party, which is the United States Tax Court, and litigating the case there. And in certain circumstances, it may be a federal district court case. We also have cases that deal, the other big broad category is collections. So these are people that come in and there's no doubt that they owe tax, but they cannot pay. They cannot pay. And so you become their representative dealing with the agency in those cases to try and come up with some alternative so the person doesn't end up destitute. We also have a practice with the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, which is all agency level. They don't have a separate court. And we also do some impact litigation when we can. We've had students work directly on circuit court cases around the country. We do amicus briefs. We also do cases in chief in the circuit courts when it's an issue that we think impacts a lot of taxpayers. In all of these situations, again, we want the student attorney to be the one interfacing directly with the client, gathering the information. The attorney supervising, meet with that student to go over the law and to talk about the legal advice to give the client. But it is very much student-centered.
Yeah, I think litigation is litigation no matter what field you're in, what area of law you're in. So, you know, pleadings and discovery is just going to be part of everything. So if you want to get litigation experience in the family law court, you will do things like depositions. You will stand in front of a judge and advocate for your client. You will negotiate with opposing counsel, with opposing parties if they're not represented, for a settlement agreement. And you know, part of that, and I've had students do trials. And so if you're doing trials or any evidentiary hearing, that means you're doing opening statements, you're doing cross-examination, direct examination, admission of documentary evidence, closing statements. All of those things are part of litigation, and you'll get exposure to parts or all of those things as part of the family law clinic. Unusually, we had in this semester 2 students who argued in front of the Massachusetts Appeals Court on cases that we tried and then appealed. So that was unusual, but it happened twice this semester, and the students did it. One of the students wrote the brief, and while she was a student, and wanted to argue the case. So when she became a 3L and it got scheduled for oral arguments, she came back and did the argument. So we do a lot of supervision and a lot of support, and we moot and for hearings and all those things. But like the other clinics, the students are going to be the main person who has contact with the client, figure out a strategy going forward. In family court, one thing that I would just want to focus is that on cases like a divorce case, we're not talking just about child-related issues, because that is part of it. But in divorces, we're also talking about marital assets and division of those marital assets. So many times the issues come up where we have properties, hidden assets, and we have to do investigation into how much cash is under the mattress, for example, or people who have property, real property outside of the country. To identify those things, to evaluate those things, to argue for equitable division of those things in the middle of, as part of the divorce. So there's a lot of financial aspect. You might have to do a little accounting, not much, but you just have to have an eye on and review these financial documents in a way that'll be advocating for your clients. So there's, you know, the whole array of practice within litigation.
Right, I have one more question for the group, but then sort of, warning to the crowd, the Q&A is coming your way. So start thinking of your questions. You're welcome to put it into the poll everywhere, or just, as I said, the old fashioned way, raise your hand. Especially for admitted students, actually, one of the components of clinical work is you're obviously doing the work of a lawyer. This is the major aspect that is different in terms of the education and pedagogy. But there is a classroom component to the work. You're doing the practice coupled with classroom components, but every clinic structures that differently. So could each of you talk a bit about the classroom component that accompanies your clinic, what that looks like, what students are learning, and how it is integrated into the practice? We'll just go backwards.
Well, like all the clinics at LSC, we have a weekly 2-hour seminar that's held over here in Cambridge and WCC. It's where we get to sit around and talk about tax law together for 2 hours, and pretty appealing. But what we do in those, what we use that seminar for is to have a more formal discussion of some of the procedures and issues that you will encounter when you're representing people. It doesn't always line up with exactly where you are in a case, because you come in and we give you your cases in the first week and you start working on them. So sometimes you'll come to a certain class that may be on a certain topic, and you've already started working that type of case. So that gives us an opportunity to do a case round with you to share with your classmates on that. So everyone who's in the seminar is also in the clinic. And so we're able to do that kind of combined check-in together where we're talking about our real cases in the clinic, as well as doing some examples and problems to make sure that everyone understands the procedures and the substantive law that we're doing. So it's once a week, 2 hours.
Ours is very much a mix of sort of learning to be a lawyer and skills to be a lawyer, and doctrinal consumer law discussion around statutes and law that supports us. So, you know, we went over how to draft an answer, how to draft discovery. Unfortunately, you know, like Audrey was saying, timing never isn't always perfect. Like I had one of my students drafted an answer, and the next week we talked about how to draft an answer. But so we talk about, you know, practical skills. Client interviewing is in our first class because that's a skill everybody needs. And so it's a mix of that sort of thing. And then we talk about, you know, some of the major consumer statutes. Chapter 93A is the Massachusetts Consumer Protection Statute. Every single one of our students interacts with that in one of their cases, probably all of their cases. So, you know, we spent half a class talking about that, some federal statutes that are really important to consumer law as well. And then like the tax clinic, we do have student rounds where every student during the semester presents about one of their cases. And it's a way for, you know, people to hear about other people's cases, but also brainstorm. They're really great because other students ask questions that make the person think about other ways of viewing their cases or other things that they could be doing. Roger and I always talk about how we learn a lot during those because it makes us think more creatively about our cases as well. And then at the end of the semester, our students also present on sort of an innovative, novel issue of consumer law, which again, is really helpful for us as well as the students.
So our clinical seminar, the Veterans Law and Disability Benefits Clinical Seminar, is very similar in that we're focusing on skills and common areas of law that you need to know in order to do the work of the clinic. And we have entire classes dedicated to building those skills, client interviewing, client counseling, delivering an opening statement, as well as a focus on ethics and leaving room for case conversations and case rounds. The clinical seminar really is a part and parcel of the work that students are doing in the clinic. The skills that you're learning in the classroom, you're immediately applying in the clinic, and the experiences you're having with clients in the clinic are being brought into the classroom as well. We also bring in guest speakers and who might represent community groups with which we're working or can tell us more about military culture or working with clients who are experiencing trauma to ensure that we're bringing other expert and interdisciplinary voices into the classroom to expand our perspective and expand our learning. This year, for the first time, we also offered an alternative seminar, the Poverty Law Workshop, which is a general seminar open to students at HLS, but has some seats reserved for students in our clinic, specifically within the Safety Net Project. And that Poverty Law Workshop focuses on working with folks who are experiencing homelessness and living in poverty and thinking about the public benefit programs that we have that are attempting to address the issues facing that client population.
I think we all conduct our seminars very similarly. We do have case rounds in the family DV clinic as well. We also have guest speakers. This year, we had a judge come in and talk about what she sees when she's sitting and there are restraining orders happening in front of her, what's important to her. The presentation of students sometimes that she sees and what's good and bad from her perspective. So that was, I think, really helpful. We also have we start every seminar with a discussion about what happened that past week, because all the students are kind of similarly doing things, but in their own cases. It's a good way to figure out who else is doing what you're doing and say, hey, you're doing a financial statement, I'm doing a financial statement, let's do this together and figure out what rules apply and if we're all doing it well. We also have a hypothetical couple that we follow through the semester. And with those fact patterns, we do mock hearings because you don't want your very first time standing up and saying, Your Honor, to be in front of a real judge. We do a lot of mock hearings and different situations of how you would present a restraining order hearing, as well as temporary orders and other things like that. So, and along with procedural rules, the law of marriage and divorces here in Massachusetts, and learning. It's a steep learning curve, but once you get into it, I think it's a really fun thing to do.
We've got about 10 minutes and it's your turn. What questions do you all have? Thank you. And can you share your name when you ask your question?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kate Oki, I'm a 1L. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I was curious if you could all just briefly share what the time commitment is per week in your clinics.
I think it's the same across all the clinics. You have an option to sign up for 3, 4, or 5 credits in the clinic. So that corresponds to 12, 16, or 20 hours in the clinic. Thank you.
Math. I have to do math.
And then there's the weekly seminar for 2 hours. And in general, we find that students who sign up for the clinic get more out of it the more hours they're able to commit, especially because working at the Legal Services Center requires coming out to our office in Jamaica Plain. That said, we want to leave the option open for students who we know are busy and who are interested in doing a lot of things to be able to engage in different levels of work in the clinic. And so we offer that opportunity for students to select the number of hours per week they want to work based on credit hours, and that we as instructors also make adjustments to the case assignments and the team assignments that we give to our students to ensure that we are not either overloading or underutilizing our students' time.
2 questions. One, just as a quick
What's your
follow.
name?
Oh, my name's Nate Bartholomew. I'm a 1L. First question is just a quick follow-up to that. How many days a week since it's down, kind of takes some commuting, do students tend to like come and stay for like full days at a time? And then my second question is specifically for Betsy. You mentioned there were 3 kind of specific projects. Do students in your clinic get to state a preference for which one they want to work on, or is it randomly assigned, or do they work on all?
I'll answer the second question first, which is we do our best to honor student preferences. We reach out to students before the semester starts to talk with students about their interests and their learning goals, so that you're better informed about making a project selection. And we are almost always able to honor a student's first choice in terms of project. And sometimes we also are able to accommodate students working across multiple projects if they're interested in doing so. And that's when I talk about the schedule piece.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mary.
Yeah.
Different clinics might have different needs to have students on certain days, like if there's a regular court session on a certain day. I know for us in the tax clinic, we don't really care how students put their hours together as long as it's within business hours on one of those 5 days a week. So we actually step back and wait for students to tell us, these are the days that I'm going to do my hours. So.
Yeah, and I think it varies. Some people do 2 full day, 2 full day. Like I have a student that has partial days, 3 days in a row. She actually likes commute, like coming into the center and commuting. So even though I've given her the option of being remote one day, she comes all the days because a lot of students just get a lot out of being there, and access to easy printing and mailing and being able to show up at our office doors and ask questions and things like that. I will say I will now next semester highly encourage students, if they're only twice a week, not to have them Thursday, Friday, which one of my students has, because it's really hard if you're doing active cases and communicating with people to have multiple days where you're sort of, off in the ether and can't respond, or at least to, check their email, one of the days that they don't have clinic hours. because it is really hard if you're actively litigating to not respond to things for several days in a row on a regular basis.
I just want to add that if you have court cases, you may want to consider having morning hours, because that's when court schedules your cases sometimes. I don't know if different practices have different kind of ways of doing that, but for the family court, most court cases start in the morning, so we probably want some morning hours. But I think I agree with the idea of having multiple touch points throughout the week instead of having the bulk of the time being one part of the week. Even if you siphon off some of those hours for remote hours, say, for example, in a different part of the week, so that you don't go too long without coming back to client contact.
And we also, in the tax clinic, we also let you adjust things as we go too. So if you have a week where, oh, I have my big call with the IRS on Tuesday morning, I really don't want to miss that, but my hours are on Wednesday and Thursday, you can shift things that week, or you can do more hours one week and a little bit of less the second. So we work with you on that.
Absolutely. I have a student who doesn't normally have Wednesday hours that's doing a hearing next Wednesday. I'll just adjust because he wrote the motion. Of course, he wants to do the hearing. We had no say over when it was scheduled.
My name's Colette. I'm just wondering if any of you could speak to some of the community learning projects that you've done in the past, boards that you've worked with.
Well, Betsy and I are working with Horizons. I think Horizons for Homeless Children. You want to speak about that?
Sure. So some of you may be familiar with this program, but it serves families experiencing homelessness. This organization just opened a brand new building right near the Legal Services Center. And we said, oh my goodness, what synchronicity here. We want to partner with them. And so in addition to being available to accept referrals from this program, where there are many low-income families with children who have a variety of different legal needs, we've also been partnering with them to help train their staff on legal issues, both being able to identify legal issues and make appropriate referrals, but also figuring out there's some kinds of legal issues for which you don't need an attorney, right? Or where a service provider can provide some initial assistance. So training up the staff on those issues. And then also working with them to schedule know your rights trainings and thinking about community legal education for folks who may not otherwise have access to that information, who could advocate for themselves or might make different choices if they had more information about immigration law or family law or benefits that are available to them. So that's one example.
Yeah. Another example is this project I mentioned earlier that I'm working on with the housing clinic as well, around unfair debt collection and in the landlord tenant context. We're really involved with City Life Vida Urbana, which is actually right down the street from LSC as well, which is this great tenant organizing and homeowner organization, which I actually worked with it when I was at GBLS too. We also, in the consumer side of things, also mortgages and trying to prevent foreclosures is another big piece of what we do. And we work really closely with them. We have a weekly meeting on this project, and the first 10 minutes before we get into anything attorney-client protected, we have an organizer from City Life, one or more organizers involved in talking about ways that we can do things on the ground as well, and thinking about other places where there's aggressive eviction or other problems going on, and hearing straight from the organizers is super helpful in that context as well.
So we in the tax clinic have a number of partnerships with different types of service providers, which we mainly use for referrals of clients in need, but every now and then we'll see some systemic issue come up that we want to try and partner with that organization on. So for example, we have an ongoing relationship with an organization called After Innocence, which is based in California. They represent exonerees, wrongfully convicted exonerees who are post their jail sentence, who now have civil legal needs. And a couple of years ago, they noticed that a lot of people were being taxed on the awards that they had received as compensation for wrongful convictions, even though there was a retroactive statute making those awards non-taxable. You had to proactively come back and say, even though I got this award 3 years ago, stop taxing me on it. That had a deadline coming up to be able to bring those old cases. So they reached out to us. They did a nationwide survey looking for clients in that situation, reached out to us and some other tax clinics to represent those people and get those awards out from the tax system. So that's just an example of where you have those ongoing relationships and something pops up, and then the next thing you know, you have a project with that organization.
So we're at time, but as quickly as you can, you've got a group of people here who are likely interested in community-based and holistic lawyering. What is the one quick piece of advice you give them? We'll just go down the line.
To approach this stuff with an open mind and know that the thing that you're trying to take away is to learn a lot of different things at once and help in lots of different ways. Right.
I will probably be stealing this from someone else, but take a clinic, any clinic.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's one of these 4, another one. Clinics are so helpful, so much more fun than being in a classroom hearing about Fed courts or something. It gets a great experience. If you're planning to work for a law firm, you're probably not going to have client interaction for several years. Even better if you're planning on legal services, it's great experience for legal services. Just, highly recommend doing it.
Yeah. I'll add, as part of taking a clinic, experiment. You get to try different things. Maybe you're not sure what you want to do with your career. You're not sure you like a particular type of law. Between internships, externships, and clinics, you can experiment with a lot of different things, and it's only going to help you figure out what you like, you don't like, what you're good at, where you want to keep working.
Yeah, you only learn you learn the best when you actually do the thing that you want to do. So in doing it, I say the experience is key. And clear, I think so many times you're going to end up in a law firm or as a 1L, first year associate, with the only one who's ever made an appearance in front of the judge, the only one who's ever taken a deposition. So that's the kind of thing I think you're going to get from clinic work.
Well, a huge thank you to our clinicians for taking the time. Yes, thank you for all you're teaching our students, and especially for the work you're doing for your clients in our community.
Thank you.